Okay, so in this video, we're going to set up our asset manager and our loading screen to load the texture assets. Before I do that, though, the map, we've never actually set up for it to be disposed correctly. So it should have been map.dispose, that TMX map. But because it is a graphic piece that we would need to dispose ourselves. But since Asset Manager is actually disposing that, if I was done with my game, so my main game screen was done, then when I'm actually, I don't need to dispose that. I wouldn't need to dispose it when I'm done with my game screen. My Asset Manager would do that. So when I'm done with my game completely and I dispose my Asset Manager, it will deal with it itself. So, which means that we did not create a method for disposing. Public void dispose, and that would be asset manager.dispose. Okay, so when an asset manager disposes, it's getting rid of all the assets, making sure that they are unloaded properly, and then disposing of them. So then in, say, my main game screen, my asset manager.dispose will now work, and that's going to properly load all of my unload and get rid of all of my stuff. Okay, so now let's go into our My Asset Manager, and then we need to do kind of the same thing. We have a map asset that we loaded and a tiled map. We are going to, I'm just going to copy these because it's going to make it a little bit easier. And we're going to create some for doing textures. So let's load. And this is going to be texture asset and string file path. We want to make sure it's not null. As long as it, let's do another one. If asset manager dot is loaded texture file path, then we need to return. Okay. So for setting up for asynchronous, we don't need to keep doing this. We only are doing that if it hasn't already been loaded. So if it has been loaded, the path, the file that I'm adding in, then what I want it to do is I want it to do the update. So when I load a texture asset in my asset manager, I should only do it once. I should only try to upload it once, and then all I have to do is just tell it to update. So as long as it exists, let's set the loader. Now the loader, it's not just going to be any texture. It needs to be texture that's pulled from a texture atlas. So texture atlas.class, and then that would be a new texture atlas loader. Texture atlas loader, which is still going to need the asset manager handle resolver, and then I'm going to tell the asset manager to load, but now it's loading a texture atlas, so I need to tell it what type. And then again, if we wanted to block it, we can uncomment this, or we can tell it to continually do it. So texture loaded, and I give the path, or texture doesn't exist. Texture doesn't exist. Okay, and then let's get that texture, and again we're going to kind of set it up similar. So texture atlas, and let's just call it atlas. I'm going to set it to null. And if it is loaded, I'm going to assign it atlas, and this is why it's erroring out, because I'm saying what class it was. It's looking for a texture atlas, but here it's only seeing a tiled map. So I need to change it to a texture atlas file, and then I'm returning that atlas. And if it isn't, then that texture atlas was not loaded. Texture is not loaded, and return a null atlas. Atlas. Why you not like it? Because it's not returning a tiled map, it's returning a texture atlas. And we are good. So those are the methods for us to do a texture. Let's go to the loading screen and let's start adding those pieces. All right, so if we were doing another method, private void loading texture atlas my asset manager dot load texture asset, and now I'm going to have to look at my folder. So this one is inside sprites / output / and then I need to say the file, and this was our Redbeard run atlas.atlas. So whatever name you have for it, Redbeard run atlas.atlas. Okay. And then that's going to pull the PNG that it needs. Okay. So let's go ahead and add that method into our show. We are loading the map assets. We are loading the texture atlas. And it should be loading that file when we are in our main game screen. Let's go ahead and run it. All right, it did not error out, so we should be all right, but now we got to start actually building all of that stuff for that texture, which is going to take a bit. Okay. So again, we do not want to use it though until it's loaded. So we may end up having to create some other method to make sure that the progress is within the time that we want. This update asset loading is going to continue going. Let's go ahead and start. Let's change this because we want that to my asset manager dot. Let's go look in here. Our get progress. Load completed, and we want to get the progress. Load completed. Okay, so that's going to return, and we want to make sure that that is close to 1. So we want it to be, because if we do it, if it's equal to 1, this is what will happen. All right. So it gave it to us. I don't know if they fixed it, but that was an issue that I had a lot on making sure that it was loading. It finished pretty quick. Okay. All right. So our My Asset Manager, let's go ahead and make sure that load map asset is not doing that more than once. Just the same way that we did our texture. If it is loaded, then we want it to just return. So I have a lot of checks to make sure that I have that file before I try using it. Okay, so that is creating for the asset manager for the methods, just for doing textures and for loading the atlas. I'm going to stop this video because I'm going to start another one for starting to build in our entity manager the pieces that we would need for creating the components and the entity manager for building our animations. All right, so good luck, have fun.